Live from New Delhi, you're watching DD India Live, India's voice to the world. I'm Abhishek Mahajan, coming up in the next 30 minutes. Trump's war against drug trade continues as US imposes sanctions on Colombian President Petro. Also, Venezuela's Maduro accuses US of fabricating war. Kiev allies urge more pressure on Moscow to end the conflict, while Putin's special envoy hints that Russia, US and Ukraine are close to diplomatic solution. US government shutdown hits day 24 with no deal in sight as the Senate stands adjourned for the weekend. Federal workers missing first full paycheck. Flight services affected. And India slams Pakistan at United Nations, calls upon Pakistan to end the grave and ongoing human rights violations in the areas illegally occupied by it. Our top story, the US on Friday imposed sanctions on Colombian President Gustavo Petro, accusing him of failing to curb illicit drug trafficking and refusing to stop the flow of cocaine to the US. The US Treasury blacklisted Gustavo Petro, First Lady Veronica Alcocer, his eldest son Nicholas and Interior Minister Armando Benedetti, banning them from travel to the United States and freezing any US assets they hold. The action adds Petro to a list of world leaders under US sanctions, alongside Venezuelan President Nicolas Maduro, Russian President Vladimir Putin and others. Last weekend, Trump announced an end to hundreds of millions of dollars of US aid to Colombia and threatened tariffs on Colombian goods. Now, Colombian president said he had sought to fight drug trafficking for decades. Gustavo Petro says sanctions on him were a paradox. In a post on his social media on Friday, Petro said, "I have no desire and I never will to do business in the United States."
El resumen.
I've never done business. I don't have a dollar in the United States. There's no account to freeze. I have no desire and I never will to do business in the United States. That is why this gathering has an objective, which is not only to talk about Trump. We will not speak about him anymore in this government.
And the Pentagon on Friday ordered the deployment of an aircraft carrier strike group to counter drug trafficking organizations in Latin America. The deployment is part of Trump's military build-up in the Caribbean, which includes 8 additional warships, a nuclear submarine and F-35 aircraft. The Gerald R. Ford, which was commissioned in 2017, is the United States' newest aircraft carrier and the world's largest, with more than 5,000 sailors aboard. Trump hasn't specified when the carrier will depart for the region. The carrier announcement came after Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth said an overnight strike on a boat alleged to be operated by Venezuelan drug trafficking gang Tren de Aragua had killed 6 people in the Caribbean Sea. The deployment marks a significant escalation amid heightened tensions with Venezuela, whose government Washington has long accused of harboring drug traffickers and undermining democratic institutions. Meanwhile, Venezuelan President Nicolas Maduro said the US is making up an eternal war as the Trump administration announced a US military build-up in the Caribbean. Maduro defended Venezuela as a drug-free country, adding that Venezuela will put an end to the cocaine trafficking that comes from neighboring Colombia.
Se están inventando.
The people of the United States know it. They are making up a new eternal war. They promised that they will never enter a war, and they are making up a war that we will avoid. With the mobilization of the people of South America, as South America and the Caribbean all say no to war, yes to peace, yes to prosperity, yes to harmony and living together.
Now, Venezuela released 18 Colombians on Friday after month-long negotiations with the government of Gustavo Petro in an emotional encounter with their loved ones. Families rushed to hug the Colombians who were released at an international bridge between the two countries in Norte de Santander, accompanied by Colombia's Foreign Minister Rosa Villavicencio. Villavicencio said there were some fellow nationals still detained in Venezuela and that her administration would continue talks with President Nicolas Maduro's government to set them free. The diplomat also said the Colombians released did not have any judicial proceedings in Venezuela. Among the detainees still held in Venezuela, estimated at more than 40 in total, there is an employee of the Danish Refugee Council who was detained in September 2024. Thousands of supporters rallied in Bogota's Bolivar Square to back President Petro after the United States imposed sanctions on the Colombian leader, escalating tensions between the longtime allies. At the demonstration, supporters carried banners reading, "Thank you, President Petro, for your legacy, and Petro is not a drug trafficker." Police checked attendees at security checkpoints as crowds streamed into the square, some waving Colombian flags while a drum band played. The move marks a sharp deterioration in relations as U.S. military activity has increased in the southern Caribbean, with Trump accusing Petro of allowing drug cartels to flourish. And as part of efforts to pressure Russian President Vladimir Putin to end the conflict, more than 20 nations supporting Ukraine have pledged to take Russian oil and gas off the global market. While Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky, who visited London, urged Kiev's allies on Friday to introduce sanctions against all Russian oil companies, its shadow fleet and oil terminals to disrupt Moscow's ability to fund its conflict in Ukraine.
Peace is born from pressure on the aggressor, and that is what we must continue to do.
British Prime Minister Keir Starmer said that the country is determined to act now to dial up the pressure on Putin.
Ukraine's future is our future. What happens in the weeks and months ahead is pivotal for the security of the United Kingdom and all our allies across NATO and beyond. So we are determined to act now, to dial up the pressure on Putin and finally bring him to the negotiating table in good faith.
Also, NATO Secretary General Mark Rutte agreed to significantly increase the pressure on Putin to come to the negotiating table. He also said that in Ukraine, Putin is gaining little ground on the battlefield and there are marginal gains.
That the US has placed against Russia's largest oil companies will starve them of revenue and significantly increase the pressure on Putin to come to the negotiating table. And they show once again that President Trump is absolutely committed to end this war and bring a lasting peace to Ukraine.
European Union leaders agreed to meet Ukraine's pressing financial needs for the next 2 years, but stopped short of endorsing a plan to use frozen Russian assets to fund a giant loan to Kiev over Belgian concerns. Although Moscow has promised a painful response if the assets are seized, Putin also said the sanctions on oil companies were an unfriendly act but would not significantly affect the Russian economy. Russian President Vladimir Putin's special envoy for investment and economic cooperation, Kirill Dmitriev, said on Friday that he believes his country, the United States and Ukraine are close to a diplomatic solution to end Russia's conflict in Ukraine. On his arrival in Washington for talks with US officials, Dmitriev said that a meeting between Donald Trump and Putin had not been cancelled as the US president described it, and that the two leaders will likely meet at a later date. The planned summit was put on hold on Tuesday as Russia's rejection of an immediate ceasefire cast a cloud over attempts at negotiations. Trump said he cancelled the planned meeting with Putin in Budapest because of lack of progress in diplomatic efforts towards ending the war and a sense that the timing was off. Now, top US diplomat Marco Rubio voiced hope on Friday of soon putting together an international force to police the ceasefire in Gaza, as Palestinian factions agreed that a committee of independent technocrats would run the post-war territory. US Secretary of State Marco Rubio said an international security force to be put in place in Gaza under a ceasefire agreement will have to be made up of countries that Israel is comfortable with. Rubio added that the future of governance in Gaza still needs to be worked out among Israel and partner nations, but could not include Hamas, adding that any potential role for the Palestinian Authority has yet to be determined.
We haven't formed that force yet, so there's still work going on. There's a lot of countries that are offered to do it. Obviously, as you put together this force, it'll have to be people that Israel's comfortable, or countries that Israel's comfortable with as well. Let me just say that I think there are a lot of countries that are expressing interest right now. We're not going to forget about the hostages. We push every single day, and we'll continue to push until the remains of every single hostage is returned. Work is going on. Even as I speak to you now, that's being pushed on. That's not something we're going to start talking about. We fully expect that Hamas will fully demilitarize. That is the agreement they signed on to. That is the agreement that all of the nation states that joined this effort signed on to, and we expect it to be fulfilled.
Now, Malaysian authorities ramped up security measures in Kuala Lumpur for the ASEAN summit. Security personnel were seen conducting thorough checks at all entry points to the venue of the summit, Kuala Lumpur Convention Centre. The three-day summit set to begin on Sunday will bring together leaders from the 10-member bloc and dialogue partners including the United States and China. The summit comes at a critical time as the region grapples with tensions in South China Sea, the ongoing crisis in Myanmar and efforts to strengthen economic integration amid global trade uncertainties. Meanwhile, Thai Prime Minister cancelled his trip to the ASEAN summit in Malaysia due to Queen Mother's death. The cabinet will meet on Saturday to discuss her royal funeral. Now, China and the United States began their latest round of trade talks in Malaysia on Saturday ahead of a closely watched meeting between their two leaders in South Korea. The world's two biggest economies are seeking to avoid further escalating a damaging tit-for-tat tariff war, with US President Donald Trump expected to meet his Chinese counterpart Xi Jinping in South Korea next Thursday. Before departing from the United States to attend the 47th ASEAN Leaders Summit in Kuala Lumpur, US President Trump hints out at trade talks with China.
Well, I'll be talking about Taiwan. Won't be going there, but I'll be talking about it. Won't be too far away. A lot of respect for Taiwan.
Now, Beijing announced this month sweeping controls on the critical rare earths industry, prompting Trump to threaten 100% tariffs on imports from China in retaliation. The two countries also began charging arrival fees on each other's ships, sparked by a US Section 301 investigation that found Beijing's dominance in the industry was unreasonable. Moving on, Canadian Prime Minister Mark Carney said on Friday that the country stands ready to resume trade talks with the United States that President Donald Trump halted over anti-tariff advertisement issued by Ontario's provincial government. Trump terminated the talks on Thursday over the video which used Republican icon, former President Ronald Reagan, saying tariffs caused trade wars and economic disaster. In a late-night social media post, Trump called the ad fraudulent. Carney has tried on to White House visits since becoming Prime Minister to strike a deal to lower import tariffs on steel, aluminium and autos imposed by Trump that have hurt Canada's economy. Despite Carney's overture to revive US talks, Ontario Premier Doug Ford said he ordered the ads to keep running during the weekend's Baseball World Series games between the Toronto Blue Jays and Los Angeles Dodgers to reach a bigger US audience. As the ongoing US shutdown continues with no deal in sight, more flights to be delayed, with air traffic controllers set to miss their first paycheck as the federal government shutdown enters its 24th day. Some 13,000 air traffic controllers and about 50,000 Transportation Security Administration officers must work without pay during the government shutdown. Airlines are bracing for more disruptions. In 2019, during a 35-day shutdown, the number of absentees by controllers and TSA officers rose as workers missed paychecks, extending wait times at some airport checkpoints. Authorities were forced to slow air traffic in New York and Washington. The FAA is about 3,500 air traffic controllers short of targeted staffing levels, and many had been working mandatory overtime and 6-day weeks even before the shutdown. And now hundreds of furloughed and unpaid federal workers lined up outside a Washington, D.C. food bank as U.S. government shutdown hits day 24 with no deal in sight as the Senate stands adjourned for the weekend. The shutdown has left about 700,000 federal workers furloughed, while nearly as many are working without pay, which would force households to defer spending. The Trump administration has warned of potential mass firings, escalating tensions in the ongoing standoff. For workers waiting in the line, the sense of uncertainty was palpable. Many said they were proud to serve their country but admitted it was difficult to do so while struggling to feed their families. Now, European businesses reckon things are getting better except in France, where political turmoil continues to sting economically. Credit rating agency Moody's on Friday revised France's outlook to negative from stable, citing increased risk from political fragmentation, which could continue to undermine the effectiveness of the country's legislative institutions. Moody's, in a statement, warned that political instability may hinder the government's ability to tackle key policy challenges, including a high fiscal deficit, mounting debt levels, and persistently elevated borrowing cost. France's long-term foreign currency sovereign credit rating was affirmed at AA3. The country has been roiled by political infighting since snap elections were called last year, leading to parliamentary deadlock that has hampered efforts at financial reform and increased borrowing cost. Now, Madagascar's new government has ousted President André Rajoelina of his Malagasy nationality in a decree published on Friday. Media reports said 10 days after he was removed in a military takeover. The decree means that Rajoelina, who was impeached on October 14 after fleeing the island nation in the wake of weeks of protest, would not be able to contest future elections. The decree published in the official gazette said Rajoelina's Malagasy nationality was revoked because he had acquired French nationality in 2014. Local media reported as photographs of the document were shared online. The decree cited laws stipulating that a Malagasy who voluntarily acquires a foreign nationality loses their Malagasy nationality. And the rich cultural heritage of Nagaland came alive in the national capital on Friday with the inauguration of Autumn Festival 2025 at Nagaland House. The two-day festival, organized by the Department of Tourism, Government of Nagaland, and hosted by Nagaland's Tourism Minister, and was inaugurated by Delhi Minister of Culture and Tourism Kapil Mishra. The festival showcased the rich tribal legacy of Nagaland, featuring its traditional music, dance, food, and apparels, offering Delhiites a glimpse into the state's colorful heritage and cultural diversity. Nagaland's music and cultural performances formed the soul of the evening, showcasing the state's rich tribal heritage and age-old traditions. The Autumn Festival sets the tone for the world-renowned Hornbill Festival, scheduled from December 1st to 10th at Kisama Heritage Village, featuring participation from all 17 major tribes of Nagaland. All right, we are slipping into a very short break. On the other side, more stories. Keep watching DD India Live.
Indian industries are facing pressure because of President Trump's tariff threats.
Even tariffs are part of the story, actually. If you were to look at the whole story of the deindustrialization of India, it began in many ways under the British rule. They say, oh, it's not our fault. India fell behind because you missed the bus for the Industrial Revolution. My answer is, we missed the bus is because you threw us under its wheels.
Welcome back. You're watching DD India Live. I'm Abhishek Mahajan. Some more stories. India once again slammed Pakistan at the United Nations. India's permanent representative to the United Nations, Parvatleni Harish, called upon Pakistan to end the grave and ongoing human rights violations in the areas illegally occupied by it.
Finally, I refer to the statement of the representative of Pakistan. Let me emphasize that the Union territory of Jammu and Kashmir has been, is and will always be an integral and inalienable part of India. The people of Jammu and Kashmir exercise their fundamental rights in accordance with India's time-tested democratic traditions and constitutional framework. We of course know that these are concepts alien to Pakistan. We call upon Pakistan to end the grave and ongoing human rights violations in the areas illegally occupied by it. where the population is in open revolt against Pakistan's military occupation, repression, brutality, and illegal exploitation of resources. Madam President, we see the world as one family, a vision enshrined in our civilizational ethos of Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam. This is not only an outlook that anchors our worldview, but also the reason why India has consistently advocated for justice, dignity, opportunity, and prosperity for all societies and peoples. It's also the reason why India places its faith in multilateralism, international partnerships, and cooperation. India has always stood with our brothers and sisters from the global south and will continue to help with our expertise and long-standing experience across all domains. I urge all member states to come together and join hands towards realizing this vision for making the UN fit for purpose for the new era.
While addressing the United Nations Security Council during the open debate, he reiterated that Jammu and Kashmir will always be an integral and inalienable part of India. The ambassador said that while the people in the region exercise their fundamental rights, such concepts are alien to Pakistan. And with an aim to deepen Indo-German trade, as strategic partnership marks 25 years, Union Minister of Commerce and Industry Piyush Goyal interacted with the vibrant Indian community in Berlin. The minister called upon them to continue being partners in India's growth and catalysts for deeper India-Germany ties. During his visit, Piyush Goyal met Siemens Energy's member of the executive board and Lord Parikal de Shamar and had discussions focused on deepening collaboration for building more reliable, affordable and sustainable energy systems. He praised the company's expertise in reducing emissions across the energy landscape aligns well with India's clean energy transition and growth ambitions. He also met the leadership of the Federation of German Industries. They discussed strategic initiatives to further strengthen Indo-German trade relations, deepen industrial collaboration, and enhance the role of our businesses in shaping the future of global trade. The leader also interacted with the President of International for Bank of America, Bernard Mensah, and discussed ways to deepen India-US financial cooperation, expand investment, and how ongoing reforms and a conducive business environment are strengthening investor confidence in India. Now, the Election Commission of India on Friday issued an advisory to all political parties on the use of artificial intelligence-generated and synthetic content during elections. The ECI warned that misuse of AI-altered material, such as deepfakes of political leaders, threatens the fairness and integrity of polls. Political parties have been directed to comply with IT Rules 2021 and ensure all AI-generated images, audio or videos carry clear disclosure labels. They must also report fake or unlawful content to social media platforms, and if unresolved, to the Grievance Appellate Committee. The advisory aims to safeguard electoral integrity, ensure a level playing field, and maintain voter trust. Well, shifting focus now, the 4-day grand festival of Chhath Puja begins today with the traditional ritual of Nahai Khai. On this day, devotees take a holy dip in rivers, ponds or other water bodies such as the Ganga or local streams, symbolizing the purification of body and soul. Devotees and worshippers gather along the river banks and taking holy dips. To ensure the best experience for devotees observing the Chhath Puja fasting and offering arg, which means offering to the sun, the preparations were done by Delhi government at around 1,000 sites across New Delhi, including the development of 17 model ghats. Embankments are being built alongside the river to create a seamless experience. For security, wooden barricades have been installed along the banks of the Yamuna River. All right, sports updates now. India bounced back with quick wickets after Australian batter Matthew Renshaw slammed half-century in the third and final one-day international in Sydney. Renshaw was dismissed for 56 by Washington Sundar, while Mitchell Marsh and Matthew Short made valuable contributions after Australia opted to bat. The host lost 3 wickets in the space of 18 runs. There were 236 runs for the loss of 9 wickets as per the latest reports. Earlier, India made 2 changes in the playing 11. Kuldeep Yadav and Prasidh Krishna come in for Arshdeep Singh and Nitish Kumar Reddy. For Australia, Nathan Ellis was included in place of Xavier Bartlett. Australia lead the 3-match series 2-0. And Indian women wrestlers continue to impress at the Under-23 World Wrestling Championships, winning 4 bronze medals in Serbia. Nishu, Neha Sharma, Pulkit and Srishti clinched bronze medals after a few commanding victories, taking the Indian medal tally to 6. Meanwhile, Hansika Lamba and Sarika advanced to the finals, where they will fight for gold against the Japanese wrestlers on Saturday. Lamba delivered a series of commanding performances on her way to the 53-kilogram finals. On the other hand, Sarika had many close bouts, but she showed composure and edged past her opponent. Well, that's all we have in this edition of DD India Live, but do let us know your thoughts on the news of the day. For those on the go, you can get all the latest news and updates from India and across the world on DD India mobile app. The app is available on both Android and iOS platforms. Scan the QR code on the screen to download now. And we'll be back with more news as it breaks here on DD India. I'm Abhishek Mahajan. From all of us here in Delhi, thanks for watching DD India Live.